Dang it, I don't have any water.
Oh.
I think it was the 23rd. Okay, thank you very much. That was to make sure I got my COVID test. Hello everybody, my name is Danny, and if you didn't know it, I'm also a British gentleman from the 1800s. Now, if you watched my last video, you also know that the British gentleman doesn't have a name. And while many people have tried to give him names like Frederick, Edward, I think there was like a Bartholomew there somewhere, plenty of names to go through, none of you are correct. That's right, there is actually a name for him. Now, there is a story behind his name, and I'm going to explain all of that. But first, I actually have to tell you his name. And his name is Voltaire. Now, how did I come up with such a ridiculous name? Well, with a ridiculous name comes a ridiculous story. Honestly, it's not that weird. It's just Dungeons and Dragons. Yes, I based this character, the British gentleman, off of a Dungeons and Dragons character. Technically, he wasn't a character, he's actually an NPC. He did have a character sheet and a stat block, and oh boy! Now, in Dungeons and Dragons, I've only ever played a character twice. I know, it's depressing, isn't it? But I've been a DM multiple times. DM stands for Dungeon Master. Not in the way that you think, he just makes the story and stuff. Whenever I DM, I do completely homebrew campaigns. Homebrew means you make up everything and you do everything yourself, because in Dungeons & Dragons, you can buy modules which will give you stories, but I prefer to make my own. So Voltaire was technically the big bad evil guy of the campaign, but he also wasn't. See, Voltaire was a vampire, and a very old one at that. He ran the criminal underworld of this one big city called Tomark, also known as the White City. And Voltaire, running the criminal underworld of the city, held a lot of power. But Voltaire technically wasn't an evil guy or a bad person. See, the city was run by 3 corporations, all corrupt in their own right. One was a religious zealot magic cult. Another one was just a group of barbarians and engineers. The last faction honestly wasn't that bad, but they all were murdered. Technically, Voltaire murdered them, but he did it for good reasons. So, now I'm going to tell you the story of my D&D party, because I love D&D, and I'm going to tell you about this story because I'm very proud of it. So the party is made up of 3 people. We have a human, a half-elf, and a changeling. The party itself was made up of 2 females and a male, but they all technically played females. We have Lyra the human bard, we have Celine the human paladin, and then we have Priya the elf rogue. No, actually, I made a mistake. Priya was not an elf, she's actually a Kalishtar. A Kalishtar basically has a little soul attached to them into the dream world where they can communicate with them and do little things, and it's like the spirit's ancestor. And all of them came to this city to find fortune, favor, whatnot. And they get to the city and they accidentally rob a government official. This government official's name is Farastrutha. Farastrutha is like, I want you to think high-class hippie. Lots of big flowy gowns, she lives in a tree. She's basically just like an elf, like a really pretentious elf. But the secret is, Farastrutha was actually dead. Yes, that's right. Twist. Farastrutha was in fact an undead acolyte being controlled by a mind-controlled beast called an aboleth. Aboleths are very spooky. I'll put a picture up on screen right here. I know. Freaky, right? Basically, what this aboleth did, killed Farastrutha, used its magic to take over her mind, and then used her position in the government in order to control things from behind the scenes. Spooky. So the party goes back to Farastrutha's house and finds a hidden passageway underneath the fireplace. This hidden passage leads down into the sewers, which leads to a well, in which the aboleth resides. They then try to escape the aboleth, but are unable to, as the aboleth is flooding the sewers and they are about to drown. In order to try and escape, they go back to the tree, which is completely locked down, and then they try to burn the tree down, with them inside of it. So smart, I know. Genius plan, right? So there they are, stuck inside the tree as it's burning around them. But the rogue sends the spirit to go get help from someone because they're inside a burning tree. Also, technically, Kalishtas can't send their little spirits to do things like that. I didn't really care. I like homebrew stuff, and I thought it'd make it more interesting. So, sends the spirit, and then it goes in contact a vampire. And this vampire's name is Voltaire. Voltaire comes to the tree, takes an explosive crossbow, blows open a hole in the tree, and takes the party back to his manor. Since he is ruler of the criminal underworld, the party just can't get off without a prize. So, now the party is indebted to Voltaire and have to do some of his dirty work for him. So, the party comes into the employ of Voltaire. They do some odd jobs for him, kill some people, burn some buildings, And then they get roped into a bigger mess. So, as I was talking about the factions earlier, there's one faction called the Yaiko Ryoshira. They are basically a bunch of ninja magic cultists that construct control all the magic in the city. The Yaiko Raya Shira is run by 3 main people, and they are acolytes of the greater Grandmaster of the Yaiko Raya Shira. These 3 people are named Zafir Khan, Vila, and Kata Carson. Zafir Khan is a magical enhanced barbarian, Vila is a trickster rogue, and Kata Carson is just a witch. Now, what ends up happening is Voltaire sends the party to go investigate the Yaiko Raya Shira because there's been some disappearance of, let's say, resources. They go investigate this big warehouse where the clan is supposedly keeping these resources, and they find an airship. Strange, right? They see Vila, the rogue, come in and get on the airship. They then follow her onto the airship, and they find that there are these crates of liquid on the ship. This green goo flowing around in this vial. Very mysterious. Very mysterious. They stay on the airship as it heads out of the city into the wilds, and where it lands, and Vila meets with 3 scary-looking people. One of which is the police commissioner of the city, another one a shrouded figure in a robe, and the other one honestly doesn't really matter. Now, Vila offloads the vials, gives it to the 3 people, and then the hooded figure comes over to Vila. The hooded figure unmasks themselves, and it turns to be Farstruther. You remember the person I talked about, the government official woman that was dead? Yes. She's still dead, and she's still being controlled by the aboleth. But it turns out Vila and Farstruther are sisters, and that the aboleth controlling Farstruther is using Vila to blackmail the Yaiko Raya Shira into getting these resources. So the aboleth obviously has some grander plan and is using Vila via Farstruther in order to get them. Vila then gets back on the airship and starts flying it back towards the city. But while on the airship back to the city, Vila takes one of these vials and injects it into herself. She then starts to glow green and starts to grow scales and wings. I know. Spooky, right? Again, most of this is homebrew, so if you're a D&D fanatic, don't come at me, alright? D&D, you can do literally whatever the fuck you want, alright? And that's exactly what I did. What the fuck I wanted, so don't come at me. She then becomes a miniature dragon, and then jumps off the ship. The party is like, what the fuck just happened? She turned into a dragon, and just flew away. Where's the airship going? The airship was pointed directly at the biggest residential community in the city. Now, the party was able to redirect the ship so it didn't crash into, hundreds of civilians. But they were still accused of terrorism. They were then taken to the police commissioner, who, remember, is helping blackmail Vila. They were then able to run away and then went back to Voltaire. Now, Voltaire's like, the fuck is going on? You have to explain things to me. So the party explains that there's an aboleth underneath the city in the sewers, the police commissioner's in on it, Farstruther's actually a zombie, and the Yaiko Raya Shira are corrupt and are going to kill everyone. So Voltaire's like, this is bad. We need to overthrow the government. And the party was down for it. So then they decided to overthrow the government. And they did. The party then broke into the main headquarters for the police. They killed the police commissioner, then called in Voltaire, who used his influence in the underworld, got a bunch of mercenaries to go and basically usurp the police force. So then there was a big war between the police and then the parties and everything, and there was this big siege, and half of the city was on fire, and it was crazy. But here's the thing. The city actually liked Voltaire more than they liked the government. Remember, government, very corrupt. The city was getting taxed quite a bit by the government, and the police force was quite abusive towards its citizens. So when Voltaire came in, he, instead of abusing people, helped them and set up refugee camps for the civilians during the fighting. So the civilians actually appreciated Voltaire's work more than the city. So again, Voltaire, not just a bad guy. Right? Voltaire had control over the city at this point, and he was helping people, doing different things, but something was still wrong. He would disappear for hours at a time, going to do secret things. And during this time, the party decided to investigate the Yaiko Raya Shira more to ensure that, the corruption wasn't going to destroy more things. They go to the headquarters for the Yaiko Raya Shira, and they find one of the head members dead. Kata Carson, you remember her? Yes. Well, she was cut in half and strung up on a cross. And they were like, who could have done this? This is such a terrible thing. It was Voltaire, FYI. So they find Zafir Khan, the other dude who leads the Yaiko Raya Shira, and they're like, bro, your girl's dead. And he's like, I know, and Vila's missing. So they then go search for Vila, who then find her in the sewers, and it turns out she took a bunch more of the vials. So now she's like a, Parasite the Maxim, the anime, where they can manipulate their muscle mass and shoot it out at different things like blades and stuff? Yes, Vila can do that now. Again, homebrew shit. What are you gonna do about it? Gatekeeper? They find Vila, and then they bring her to Voltaire, and Voltaire's like, well, this isn't exactly great. But Vila and I used to know each other. No, they didn't know each other like that. They were business partners, actually. But Vila's like, Carter Carson, no, she's dead. She's like my sister. And then the party's like, wait, isn't Farah Struther also your sister? And then Vila's like, I realized that she was manipulating me, blah, blah, blah. That's why I took more of the vials, because I'm going to try and kill the aboleth beneath the city. So the party was like, sounds like a plan to me. The party then goes back to the aboleth, and they find that there are runes inscribed in blood all around the well, which wasn't there the first time. Now, who would have put these blood runes around the well? It was Voltaire, FYI. Now, why would Voltaire put these blood runes around the aboleth? As it turns out, the aboleth had actually had control over most of the populace in the city, as he would drown them in the sewers, reanimate them as his corpses, and then make sure they continue their daily lives. Again, that's not exactly how an aboleth works. Most of this is homebrew. Again, I don't give a fuck about what you think. So, in order to control this, Voltaire put blood runes around the aboleth that on command would use a spell called Dimension Door to teleport the aboleth into a void realm in which it would die. Voltaire made a prison for the aboleth that if it did anything wrong, he would kill it. So, Voltaire then used the aboleth to take control over a majority of the city. And the party was like, oh, that's not good. That's not good at all, Voltaire. That is a bad boy thing to do, my friend. But Voltaire was like, I'm doing good. This is for the good of the city. I'm doing good things. But the party was stupid and then said, we're going to get rid of these runes so the aboleth can be free. And the aboleth enjoyed that plan. So then the party did this whole subplot where they had to get a bunch of blood from this one girl, and then they went to hell, and then they met this blood demon. Whole other subplot. Don't need to talk about it. They then got all this blood, took it back to the aboleth's chamber, and then used it to get rid of the blood runes. Now, Voltaire doesn't have any leverage over the aboleth. So the aboleth takes his corpses and then he decides to start killing everyone in the city. Let's go, party, you're so smart! As you can tell, I'm a little frustrated by them. Frustrated is an understatement. So the aboleth starts killing everyone. Literally everyone in the city. And the party's like, oh no, we really fucked up, didn't we? And Voltaire's like, you really fucked up. They then break back into the sewers, where they set off a chain of explosive gas that buries the aboleth in rubble, and they all escape, thank God. But Voltaire didn't technically make it. He got buried under rubble. He's not dead, though. Don't worry. He's fine. Not really. He's almost dead. Voltaire then claws himself out of the rubble, goes back over to where the aboleth is, because it's not actually dead yet. It's just buried. It's almost dead, just like him. Voltaire then sacrifices himself, casts Dimension Door, and then pulls himself and the aboleth into the void dimension, and where the aboleth and he dies. And that's the story of Voltaire. That's not the full story. I skimmed over and forgot a bunch of details, actually, an insane amount. But, yes, that's what we got. Remember to like and subscribe if you haven't. If you want more weird stories like this, comment down below. Again, comment ideas. I don't know what I'm doing. This is a weird space. This is a weird channel. But again, consider subscribing. I completely understand if you don't. But remember, stay safe, darlings. I'll see you next time.